Good morning, good afternoon. Thanks for joining. We will discuss today contingency management reserve, a topic that affect who is working with project management, who is working with project control, cost estimation. All these areas is interesting to learn a bit more about these two words. That was the difference between them. What's the correlation with them? How we can estimate these concepts. This will be the idea in this morning, this afternoon, that we'll be seeing how we can calculate and what should be included, what should not be included, for example, in the contingency. So, welcome. My name is Helber Macedo. Let me first make a quick introduction. I am the costing manager for Baker Hughes. I have been above 15 years of experience. I had the opportunity to work in nuclear energy, in the oil energy, um, in different companies. I am certified by AACE. I am a member as well about ACOSTE. I have two master degrees, one in renewables and another in geophysics. Um, my background, I'm a physicist, so I'm not an engineer. And I was an instructor for Petrobras University for 5 years. And also, I didn't mention here, but I am author of one book that you saw probably when they sent the email with the link for this live, all the details and the promotion that is happening now until 10 of July. Um, so this is the agenda that we'll cover today. We'll discuss about contingents, what is contingents, some concepts that correlate with contingents, how we can estimate contingents, and we'll try to give some examples. In the same way for the management reserve, what is management reserve, and then I will propose one methodology to estimate management reserve and finish with an example. All this content here you will find in the same way in the book. So the examples, the pictures that I'm sharing here is coming from the book as well. Um, so like I mentioned before, the idea here is to understand better the concepts and the methodologies to estimate contingents in the projects and also make some difference with correlate concepts. And what's the institutions, what's the background that I'm using behind this presentation here. One is AACE from United States, another PMI, and GAO as well, the Government Accountability Office for United States. So this is the documents plus the book that I mentioned that I published last year, Correlate with Cost Engineer Techniques. So first, let's move on. Let's talk about contingents. So contingents is a provision amount. Here will be more the focus will be cost, okay, not so much about time, but could be time as well for a project to cover any possible risks that can affect the cost or schedule. So we know that in any project, risks can happen, and also there's uncertainties that correlate with my planning, with the methodology that I'm using to estimate my cost, that could affect during the execution my cost. And then to avoid the cost overrun, I have the contingency to protect my project. The second important point about contingency, it should be included in the baseline of the project. So I calculate my costs, so I prepare all the labor, the material, all the components that I need to execute my project. Then I should add a contingency, and it will be by the baseline of my project to protect my project, to ensure that I will not have a cost overrun in that project. Like I mentioned before, um, here we will discuss a lot uh, about how to estimate what is contingent, but we will not discuss in this presentation how manage contingents during the execution. This is a different topic that we can discuss another day because there are different ways that we can manage the contingents. Could be for the project management or could be for the organization that we manage, for instance. Um, Usually contingency tends to decrease. So when we increase the maturity of my project, so I know much more, I know in details what will be the scope in my project. um, we believe, of course, if we increase the project maturity, then the amount of the contingencies will decrease. So we have this correlation. When my project maturity is low, I need more contingencies because, of course, a lot of things can happen, and then I need more protection. And who could be manage contingencies during the execution? Like I mentioned, could be the project management manager like PMI. If you look the requirements from PMI, they will say that project manager is the guy that will manage the continuous to the execution. But it could be the organization. For example, GAO is saying that should be the high level of organization. So what is important here? The importance that you should have a procedure in your company to define how you will estimate the contingents and who will be responsible to manage the contingents during the execution phase. Now we will move to understand what should be included, what should not be included in the contingents. Okay, so first, what not should be included in the contingents? Major change in the contract strategy. So if you think, for example, initially that you be a lump sum, then you change completely the strategy of the contract. Uh, it will, of course, continues not be able because you prepare everything for one strategy, then you move for a different strategy. A second point, um, for example, if you have a hurricane, a big event that can destroy big area on your site, something like that, contingency not able to cover this type of things. The same way, major changes in the planning. So suppose that your strategy, when you are in the tender phase, when you're in the planning phase, you are thinking that we work from Monday to Friday. This is all your plan for your execution, so zero overtime. But then during the execution phase, you start to need to move to work 24 hours, 7 days in the week. Of course, the contingent should not be able to this big movement from what it was planning and what it moving to the execution. Uh, Contingency is not allowance and management reserve. We will discuss these topics today, and you see that they are different. Um, for example, contingents will not cover the escalation. Escalation is a different thing that you need to use to cover your project for inflation, change in the engineering. So escalation is something that you apply for your material cost or for your labor cost if you want as well. Uh, how much will be your cost in the future, or if you are using reference in the past to bring to the present. Also, major change in the scope. So, for example, if you said initially that you have a process plant, in your process plant, you have, I don't know, one tower, and then we just for something design, you need two towers. Of course, a big impact, big major equipment that you need facilities and more things that will be required that will not be able continues to cover this big change in the scope. So what do we expect to be included in the contingencies? Uh, so for example, I'm saying that I will need a pump, but maybe I need to increase a bit the capacity of that pump. Or if I design that I will need 100 tons to execute my project of pipeline, and then in the reality, in the execution, be 105. So this variation, I will be able to cover by the contingencies because initially in my plan, I don't have the maturity to see if you be 100 tons or 105 tons. Change in the market conditions. So the market start a bit more hot. Of course, the contingents will be able to cover. But for example, if we have a pandemic or if we have a war, that will change a lot the market contingents, the market conditions. Sorry, contingents will not be able to cover. But yeah, small fluctuations in the market in the normal scenario, contingents will be able to cover this type of thing. Errors and omissions. So we are humans, and of course, sometimes mistakes are happening during the planning phase, during the tender phase, and the expectations that the contingency will cover. For example, I typo error. I should type 10, and then I didn't type 10. I type 11. Um, um, Variation in the environment conditions. So I'm planning that will be raining happening in my site, I don't know, 100 days, but in reality move to 105, 110 days. Conditions could be able to cover this type of variation. Uh, and as well risk associated with the technology. So what is important here in the end of the day, guys? We need to have our procedure and clear in the mind that the people that calculate and estimate and contingency, manage contingents, what should be included, what should not be included. Here's top level examples. What is important in your real life, in your company, in your business, that is clear by a procedure, by training for all the team that have been working estimating contingents or management contingents that know what should be included and what should not be included when I'm calculating the contingents. Now we move for concepts that is a correlation with contingents, but they are not the same thing. So first one is allowance. Resources including the estimate to cover the cost of known but undefined requirements. So for example, a screw sometimes uh, I will have in my bill of material all the screws that I need, but maybe I don't need to go in this level of detail. I can calculate how many meters of pipe that I need, and maybe after this thing, calculate the labor that will be required, I will apply a percentile. For example, 5%, 2%, to include this small quantity of material like the screws. This is called allowance. And I can apply this thing for pipe, for civil constructions, for small things that I don't want to spend time because I don't have this time or I don't have the research to do this type of estimation. So here we try to show the difference between allowance and contingency. Okay, um, in the left side we will see allowance, and here in the right contingency. So first, allowance. Allowance, when I'm building my cost estimation, when I'm create my cost estimation, I will include this percentile. So to cover this material that I know, um, but I don't want to quantify, so I don't want to measure. So I will apply percentile here. So it's correlate with the scope. It's something that I will assemble. I need to buy. I will need to execute. So it's 100% used. Uh, Contingency, no. Contingency, when I start to look in the contingency, first I calculate my cost estimation, then I will apply the contingency. We will see the difference, what will be the techniques. But first, I calculate my cost, then I apply my contingency. Second difference, contingency is not scope. Allowance is correlated with scope. It's something that I will execute. Contingency is correlated with risks and uncertainties. So it's something that could happen, but could not happen. Um, and for this reason, it could be 100% used. So I will, for sure, I will use allowance. Contingency, no. In some cases will not be enough, what is not good but is a reality. But in some cases I will not use 100% of my contingencies. If my plan is very good, probably I will not need to use all my contingencies, and will be a profit for my company. And the final difference, allowance, I only apply this thing when I'm using the bottom up, the detailed technique to calculate, to estimate my cost. Continuous, no, I can apply different techniques, different methods to estimate my cost, and I can use contingency, I can apply contingency. Now we move to a next concept, that is uncertainty. Uh, is something that I don't know what will be the outcome of the situation. Is something that is could happen or could not happen. Um, so we can have uncertainties with a group of factors. when I'm doing my planning, okay? I have uncertainty with the methodology that I am using to estimate my cost. For example, if I use in the bottom-up methodology, of course, my level of uncertainty is not so massive because I'm going the part number, material by material, doing my proper estimation. But if I'm moving for example, the expert opinion that they say, okay, based in my experience, based on my previous project, I believe that the cost will be 100, 1 million, 1 billion. Of course, there's a lot of uncertainties using this methodology. Also, there is uncertainty with the cost reference that you are using. For example, the salary that you are using, you don't know exactly in 1, 2, 3 years of the execution what will be the real salary for each employee that will be working that project. So we have some uncertainty. Of course, you do your assumption, you do probably your study your market conditions, but you have uncertainties correlated with your cost reference. In the same way, so you don't know exactly if your salary will move 10% lower, will be 15% higher. So you should define a range of uncertainties. In the same thing, productivity, when you are planning, define what will be the duration of that activity, of that task, you use an index to calculate your productivity, but could be between, in this example here for one pipeline, for example, 200 man hour per ton, but in the reality, this is your assumption during the planning phase. During the execution, there is some uncertainties because many factors, weather conditions, the quality of the crew. So there's a lot of things that could make a variance for that productivity. So this is uncertainty. In the same thing, the quantities, your takeoff, you have uncertainties there because you plan something, but during the execution, maybe some variations in your scope. So there's some uncertainties correlate with your scope as well. So all these factors would affect your final results. So uncertainties is something that, of course, could happen, will happen in all the project because you have some variations from what you did it during your cost estimation. And the last concept that I would like to discuss here is about risk. Risk is an uncertain event or condition that, if it occurs, has a positive or negative effect. So first, risk could be positive as an opportunity or could be negative. And it will affect project objectives like scope, schedule, cost, and quality, and sometimes could affect more than one. So if maybe one risk that will affect my schedule, so we increase the duration of my project, will affect my cost as well because I will need to increase the duration of the team that will be there, or because I will have a delay in my project and then it will affect as well my contract with my client. And here some concepts correlate with risk, okay? So like I said, risk could be an opportunity, so positive or negative, like a threat. And risk should have a probability. So when one risk is defined and is measured, you need to say, okay, this is an opportunity, this is negative, and what's the probability that risk occur? Could be 20%, 50%. So we need to define what is the probability that the risk can occur, because like I said, it could happen or not. Also, risk should have an impact. So if this risk can happen, what will be the impact? What will be the effect that you see in my cost, my schedule? And here in the examples that we will discuss in this presentation today, we will use the triangular distribution. We have different ways to calculate the impact, different types of distributions, but here and in the book as well that I published last year, we are always using the triangular distribution when they need to define three information: the optimist scenario, the pessimist scenario, and the most likely scenario. I need to give these three numbers to be able to make my calculation, my simulation. Now we move to the methods to calculate contingency. Um, so first, the expert opinion. So in this scenario, one guy that has a lot of experience that have been working projects for similar projects, or a group of experts who say, look, based on my experience, I believe that I need 10%, I need 15% for this project to cover for the risks and uncertainties that can happen in this project. Another technique is when I have a procedure. I have could be a table, could be a curve, that you say, look, in this example here, I'm using um, complexity. That so the Here was the idea. I have something that I prepared before, and I have a procedure that I will follow. Say, look, if the complexity of my project is so high, and if it's, I don't know, around uh, 1 million, I will need 30%. Or if the complexity is low and the result of my cost estimation is not so high, I will use 10%. So we have some factors that I will look at table, I will look at curve, and I will correlate these things, and I will see what will be the percentile. What's the problem here? Is difficult that this methodology, we will see the very specific risks that can affect each project. Then we move in the left here for the parametric equation. What's the idea here? I will use the historical information, so previous projects. I will make a analysis, a regression analysis, to create an equation. And then after I have my equation ready, when I need to calculate the contingents, I will apply that equation. So, for example, the capacity, the process plant capacity of my unit, um, I will get that input and I will apply my equation, and then I will be able to see what will be the contingents that is required. And the last technique, and here we have more details in the examples that I will provide in the following slides, I will use risk analysis. And in my view, when we have enough maturity, this is the best technique. Here, what I will do, I will use a Monte Carlo simulation, and I will first identify all my risks, then can affect my project, define uncertainties as well, and I will then run simulations, and it will be provide thousands of scenarios, and I will be able to select, okay, this yellow dot here is showing my deterministic number. If I apply 5% of time contingency, here is the best scenario that's showing uh, schedule and cost together. In the examples that I have in the book and in this presentation is more only cost, but in this here is an integrated scenario. Um, if I apply 5% of time contingents, I can ensure that in half percent of my scenarios, so in 50% of my scenarios, I have enough time to execute my project. If I apply 7% of cost contingents, I can ensure that in half percent of my simulations of my scenarios, I have enough money to execute my project without a cost overrun. This is the idea here for the integrated scenario. But the examples that we provide soon will be more correlated with only cost. So here in this slide, we are trying to see the difference between all these techniques, all these methodology. First, about the duration. Of course, the first two methodology is very quick. It's fast. We don't need much time. The first one, I need to just get an opinion for one, two, three guys, then maybe make an average. Um, the expert's judgment is just a matter to read a procedure and to apply the equation or the table, something like that. But the parametric equation, no, you need more time because you need to have collection of data. So you need to have historical information. Then you need to make a regression analysis to create your equation. Then after your equation is ready, it's quick. It's just in 1 minute, in a few seconds, you will be able to apply your equation. But to build the equation is not simple. And then finally, risk analysis, of course, it here will take time because you need to identify your risks. You need to assess your risks to see what will be the probability, what will be the impact, and then you need to do your simulations. Then you need to go and do your definition, what will be your contingency. When I should apply um, um, these techniques? I believe that the first two here in the initial phase is the moment that maybe you are very initial phase, and then you use um, concept phase that your project, you use these techniques. But when we move, for example, for the risk analysis, I understand that you should only when we are close to move to the execution, we are moving to the gate that you take the decision if you go ahead or no for the execution. So you have more maturity of your project, then you use your risk analysis because you take more time. Of course, you can apply in the previous phases as well when you are using the fail methodology with different gates. But the correlation here is what's the maturity of your project, if you have enough information to use this technique or not. The next column here is trying to show what technique that can identify better the specific risks for the project. And of course, the risk analysis is the best technique. This is the reason that bigger here, uh, to capture, to identify the specific risks that can affect your project. The expert opinion and the predetermined percentage is very top level, so it's very difficult to get the specific risks using these techniques. Finally, um, we are moving if we need training and experience. For the first two methodologies, we don't need training, but for the expert opinion, I need some person that has a very good experience here. Here is just a matter to apply a procedure, so it's more simple, more straightforward. Parametric equation, no. I need to have training. I need to uh, show for my team how to build the equation, how to make regression analysis, and it will be good if I have someone with experience in this topic. And risk analysis, again, I need to have training for my team to explain how to do this technique, how to identify the risks, how to measure these risks. And it will be good if I have a mix of young professionals and professionals with more experience. And finally, about the accuracy. So, of course, this is what I believe, what I have been in my experience. When you saw these first techniques, the accuracy is not so good. But when we move for risk analysis, this is my view, the best way to estimate your contingencies, to have the best accuracy contingencies for your project. Now we see one example to do a probabilistic cost estimation. So we will use a probabilistic cost estimation, and we only look using uncertainties. So we will see one example. Like I said, this is coming from the book that I published last year. Uh, we will see one example how to estimate your cost, and from your cost we will see some uncertainties, so zero risks, only uncertainties here. Then I will do a simulation and I will calculate my contingency. So company ABC here need to estimate the labor uh, to assemble pipes. This is the scope. Uh, and the determinist cost here is $88,000. So I will not give a lot of details about the determinist cost, because my idea is to show the process here in top level. So this is the equation. So we are using an equation to calculate this. Your cost basically is here's a mistake. Sorry, okay, it's professional quantities typo error. I'm sorry. But to calculate your cost here, you will multiply your salary, your quantity of professionals, the benefits that you need to pay for this health insurance, life insurance, I don't know. Uh, in this case here, if you have overtime as well, the equation could be different in some countries, okay? Because in some countries, the overtime, we don't have benefits applied um, for the overtime. So here you need to make a difference. Uh, we need to look the regulation country by country, and then you multiply by the duration to calculate your cost. So uh, here the inputs. So how I calculate the cost, I'm getting these inputs here: the salary per hour, the quantity of professionals, how many hours they will work per week, what's the benefits and what the duration. Then I will apply the equation that you saw in the previous slide, and I will get my deterministic cost. But my focus here, because the time, I'm trying to move for the next step, because this is what the famous one, when everyone is doing the bottom up and make the calculation for the labor. The next one is when we start to include the uncertainties to make a probabilistic cost. So we move from deterministic cost to a probabilistic approach to be able to calculate my contingency. So what I need to do now, I need to look what will be the uncertainties. So here in my example, I will say, oh, okay, look in this scope, look what I need to do. I believe that my uncertainties are correlated with the salary of my employees and the duration, because maybe um, the productivity or I don't know, some conditions in the site. So I will define 3 points. Remember that in the triangular distribution, I need to have three numbers. The most likely, that I will use my number for my deterministic equation. So what I believe that will happen, plus an optimist scenario. Suppose that the market is not hot, so we have a lot of professionals available, and or the market is so hot, and I know that the salary will increase. So I will define these three scenarios, and as well we define a different durations for this scope. Then what I will do, okay, and here I'm just showing the final result. I will run thousands of simulations. This example, sorry, but I need to promote my book, um, is coming from the book, and the book comes with an Excel tool with exactly this example. Um, and in the Excel tool, you be able to see all this calculation details. You'll be able to make changes and see the difference. So here, what I'm doing thousands of simulations. In each simulation, I have a different input. So in the simulation number one, I will use these numbers. In the simulation number two, I will change the salary for the plumber. In the simulation number three, I will change the salary for the foreman between these ranges here. In the simulation number four, I will change two salaries plus the duration. So I will make many scenarios to measure the uncertainties. Okay. And then I will have this type of result here. What is showing? It's showing that the blue columns here is the frequency. So it's showing that, for example, this result here, 83,000, around 10% of my simulations. In this case, I run 5,000 simulations. So around 10% of my simulations, I got this number. Um, and what is this orange curve here? We call it cumulative probability curve. So this is, I am summarize result by result until I get 5,000. That what I'm using could be 10,000, could be 20,000 simulations, interactions, up to you. Um, I will be able to see where are my number for my determinist cost. Remember, my determinist cost is $88,000. And here I will take a look in this orange, that is when I'm including all the results here I got in 100%. I can see that my determinist cost is in the P51. So it's saying that for 51% of the scenarios, for 41% of the simulations, my money is enough to execute my project. But I have around 6% of the scenarios that I don't have enough money because the uncertainties of salary and the duration. So then we have a decision that the leadership, the manager, need to take. What will be the point in my cumulative probability curve that I want to protect my project? So the assumption will be, and here will be the moment that I will do my estimation for my contingents. The manager will say, look, or the leadership will say, I want to protect my project to ensure that in 50% of the scenarios, I have enough money to execute my project. So the difference between my deterministic number and the point in the curve that the leadership said that will be P50, this difference will be my contingency. So the difference between The number that I want, the decision could be P70, could be P80, and my deterministic cost will be my contingency. So in this case, I will need 4,000 or 4% as a contingency to protect my business, to ensure that in half of the scenarios, I have enough money. If you have questions, okay, guys, I forgot to mention it, you can paste in the comments. I can try to answer during the presentation here. Feel free. And also, if you can as well, just my knowledge, tell me where the country that you are from, just to see if I can, because the public that I was looking for is from Asia Pacific. I would like to see where are you from. Can you type in the comments, then they will be able to see where are you from, please. So let me keep it going here. Now we will move for a second scenario, because the first scenario is only with uncertainties. So now we will do a second calculation using probabilistic cost estimation, but I will include uncertainties for salary and for duration, and risks as well. So what would be the difference for the process that we saw in the previous slides? The difference is this new step here, where I need to identify the risks, and also I need to assess the risks. So to save some time here, I will say that these two first steps were done in the previous slides, because we know our deterministic cost, the $88,000, and I know the uncertainties. Remember that we defined the uncertainties for the salary. We defined the 3 points for the salary, the optimist, the pessimist, and the most like. But now the company ABC, they will identify the risks, and they got 3 risks: a new technology that they understand that will be an opportunity, because this new technology will save some time, and but because it's the first time that it would happen, they are saying that probability is not so high, only 30%. But they have 2 threats here, 2 negative risks: a strike, and a delay that could have to get the work permission. And they believe that this will be the probability that it could happen during the execution. So first thing, they identify the risks, then they start to assess the risks with the probability, and then with the impact. And again, for the impact, uh, they will define 3 numbers using the triangular distribution. Uh, they will say was the optimist, the most like, the most like, the optimist, and the pessimist number. And for example, for the new technology, it will be negative because it's a saving, it's opportunity. Um, and for the strike, no, will be a positive number because I will increase my cost, will be a cost overrun. And the same thing for the work delay. So they need to estimate these impacts here. And after these inputs, we will run a simulation. So I will do the simulation for the uncertainties, remember, salary and duration, plus these risks. So in some simulations, we will have risk opportunities happen, so we have a saving. In some scenarios, we have the risks happen, 1 risk or 2 risks, and the impacts will be moving between these numbers. So in scenario number 1 will be this number, in scenario number 2 will be 25,000, in scenario number 3 will be 21,000, in scenario number 4 this risk will not happen, because the probability showing that only in 50% of the simulations, so only in 50% of my scenarios, this strike will happen, and it will be the impact between these numbers here. Okay, when I run my simulation, this is my final result. So this is the blue curve only with uncertainties, and here in the gray we have uncertainties and risks. And what is happen when uncertainties and risks happen? You can see that my cost moved to the right, because now I have risks happen as well. Uh, and I can see as well my cumulative probability curve here. And now we will make a comparison to see what will be my contingency. So my contingency now will be increased a lot. And the reason is because I'm included not only uncertainties but risks. Remember that initially, when the only uncertainties that I was considering, 41% of scenarios of simulations I have enough money. Now only 12. Only 12% of my scenarios I have enough money to execute this project. So, of course, I will need more contingency. Uh, I will need much more contingency here. How much will be? It will be first the decision of the leadership. What will be the P, P50, P60, P70 that I will need to cover my project? If I select the P50 again, I will need 26% um, as contingency to protect my project. What I can do here, and because the time I will not give more details, I can create a mitigated scenario. I can take some actions to mitigate my risks, and I should rerun my Monte Carlo simulation to see the mitigate scenario. This is another thing that I can do. I can take actions, I can create a plan to mitigate my risks, and then of course my probability will be lower, my impact maybe will be lower, and then I will maybe need less contingency that was required here. For example, I can say that I will talk with my owner how I can improve the permission here to avoid delays, or I can try talk here, I don't know, with employees, I don't know, with the organization that I need to talk to try to avoid a strike, and then need to mitigate the probability and the impact. Now we move for the last part of our presentation about management reserve. So what is management reserve? May include amounts that are within the defined scope, but for the risk management don't want to fund as a contingency, or that cannot be managed using contingency. So management reserve is something that is not included in my project. So the first difference between management reserve and contingency is including the baseline of my project. Management reserve, no. Management reserve is extra money that the organization has to protect as a business. If one project has not enough money, I will use my management reserve to cover uh, that extra money. So management reserve is using the portfolio management, and contingency is using project management. So management reserve is to protect the business, contingency is to protect the project. This is another difference. And of course, in this way, when we have both pockets, when I have management reserve and I have contingency, management reserve is done by the organization, and then the contingency will be done by the project manager. So I will try to give an example using contingency and management reserve together. So here, pretending that we have three projects, project A, B, and C, and each project we have a contingency. So project A, I calculate my contingency using the methodology that I shared before, the same way project B and project C. Then I calculate a management reserve. So the business create a pocket for management reserve. And then we move for the execution phase. We have project A, project B, project C, but then project B, for many reasons, said, raise the hand and say, look, guys, I don't have enough money. I have a lot of things happen. The contingency is not able to cover everything. I need more money. So in this case, I will ask the organization, I will have a process to ask the organization, can you release part of the management reserve to project B to ensure that you'll be able to execute my project? So how is the methodology to calculate the management reserve? So here's a proposal methodology that I'm sharing with you guys, is in the book as well. First, I need to calculate my portfolio. I need to calculate what is the cost that I'm planning for project A, project B, plus project C, and also this portfolio forecast that will be the first input should include the contingencies for each project. So my first input of my equation will be the portfolio forecast, and the portfolio forecast is a summary of all the project budgets plus the contingencies for each project. Then I need to do an identification of the risks that can affect my portfolio. So first thing here, we cannot have, because remember, when I'm doing the calculation, use risk analysis for contingents, I need to identify the risks. Here I need to identify as well, but I need to be very careful because I cannot have a double dip for the risks that I identify for the project. I cannot repeat them here for the portfolio. So here I need to identify what will be the risks that I can have for my portfolio. Uh, and here maybe the management reserve can cover more big things, like if you have a flooding, a big problem that maybe the contingents will not be able to cover. Then I will need to run my simulation. So look in portfolio, not projects. And then I will calculate my management reserve using the equation that I'm sharing here. So my management reserve will be, I will look the cumulative probability curve, like I shared in the previous slide. I use the decision by the leadership will be what will be the dot in the curve, what will be the P50, P60, P7 that I will select, minus the portfolio forecast. It will be my management reserve. So let's move to one example to try to understand how could be the calculation for the management reserve. So here, company Blue Seas wants to estimate the management reserve. They have 4 projects in the portfolio. So here you can see the projects, you can see the budget for each portfolio, and you can see the contingencies that was estimated for each project. Could be a different techniques that we are using here. It's not the focus now. And here you can see the total per project. And the first input for my equation is the portfolio forecast. That is a summary for all the projects with the specific contingencies. Then I need to move for the next step. That is the identification um, of the portfolio. So you can see here the risks um, that I am identifying, and I'm saying that is opportunity or a threat. And I would like just to discuss 2 of them because they are important. Number one is low performance. What is this that I'm saying that opportunity? I'm saying that in the reality, one of this project will not use all this money during the 2023. So I'm saying, look, uh, this project here may be saying that you need $5.2 million, but the reality they will not spend all this money. So when I look at the business, I maybe can use this money to reallocate for another project. So it is an opportunity, and I believe that there's a high probability that one of these um, 4 projects will not spend all this money. And the second one that I would like to highlight and give more details here is contingent is not enough. What is saying here that for one of the projects, they will spend all the money that they have. They will spend the budget, they will spend the contingencies, and they will raise the hand to request more money. Then, when they get all this information, I start to um, define what will be the impact for these opportunities and um, for these negative things that could happen. Again, I am using the triangular distribution, and then I will move and I will run 5,000 interactions, 5,000 simulations, and then I will see what will be my curve. And here is my curve. You can see again the blue column is the frequency of that value in the 5,000 simulations. And you can see as well here my portfolio forecast. So the total money that I have for my project when I look the orange curve for 42% of the simulations, for 42% of the scenarios, I have enough money to execute my project. But then will be the decision for the leadership. I want more protection. I want more money to ensure that I will have be able to execute these projects. So suppose that they decide that for 50% of the scenarios, they want to have enough money. So the difference between the portfolio forecast and the P50 will be my management reserve. So difference between these two numbers will be my management reserve. So it's showing that this company need $1.5 million as management reserve to protect um, the business. And here we can have, in the book I give more details, we can have moving this dot a bit more for the right, or I can have a high appetite to risks and move to the left. But this is how the way that I'm proposing how you calculate the management reserve to protect the business. So conclusions, we are moving to finalize our presentation. The correct contingency and management reserve definition, of course, reduce the risk of cost overrun. If you are doing a proper analysis of your project, if you try to identify the uncertainties, if you identify your risks, if you are doing a simulations, of course, you are protecting better your project. You'll be able to define better the contingencies, avoid the cost overrun your project. Another very important thing is uh, every company should have a procedure, should have training, should have a clear definition what should be included, what should not be included in the contingents, how to estimate contingents, how you manage contingents in the same way with management reserve. Okay. um, so here's the reference for this presentation. Like I said as well, all this presentation is based in the book that I published last year. I share with you guys that people that make the registration for this presentation a promotion code to buy the book until 10th of July with a massive discount. And I hope that you enjoy the presentation. Thank you for your time, and I would like to know if you have any questions. I will be one more few seconds here to see if there are any more questions. Let me take a look. Any comments and questions? No? Okay, I cannot see comments. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your presence. You have my contact here on the screen. If you want to send me a message or something like that, you'll be welcome. Okay. Thank you. Have a nice day. Have a nice weekend as well. Bye.